Now, a willing and prudent purchaser would not be prepared, I'm surely using the same common sense approaches that we're being directed towards, would not be prepared to pay an extra $10,000 to clean up their newly purchased land. I'm sure that they would be very unimpressed if they had to fork out more money on top of buying the land, legals and stamp duty, all the rest, and then in addition to that have to pay more for contamination. That's why we believe that this amount should be taken out of the land value. Next I move on to the interest paid on disturbance costs. What's happened is that their client has paid this $27,000 out of their own pocket up front. Most people would be willing to consider that. It's a very fair sum if they've paid it up front, although the interest rate that they've used is somewhat subjective. Next, we move on to rent displacement. Why, when they've said, the expert witnesses said that they have used the agreed facts, they have worked through this in a systematic approach using valuation techniques, why have they not included sums for rent-free and incentive? Seriously, they're complaining about interest on that and when it should be paid, but if they haven't put it in themselves, it's not an issue. If they're willing to discount some of these, discount our argument and say that we haven't included things or whether we've put market value under disturb or severance is, I think is a little bit two-faced when they're quite more than willing to discount this amount, this $129,800 which we calculated, and then think that $450, which they think is more than fair, which some people would argue would be fair as well, is reasonable to pay on interest for disturbance costs of $25,000 and $2,000. Next is injurious affection, loss of potential income of stage 2. Now, everyone's been confused today by the use of this DCF. The figures that we use, the way that it's been talked about, I think from both sides has been quite confusing. But let's look at the issues. They've tried to use this before and after approach using a DCF, using an accounting method, a method that is used in due diligence for assessing potential profits, using variables and assumptions. They've tried to use this in a valuation approach. So how can you take on board some of these assumptions where they're very subjective? Anything can happen in the next 21 years, 20 years I beg your pardon, 20 years that they've used this DCF that could alter these figures that they've used. We're not even sure what's going to happen in the next 12 months, let alone tomorrow, in terms of interest rates and other world events. We've got a fair idea, but things do happen. So I'd just like to add that what they're doing here is not a systematic approach. They talk about us not using the correct approach where their own methods are very questionable. I'd like to add, if you just excuse me for a second. I'd like to add the case that we provided for you. Now, surely this is a commission that is looking at both sides of the argument. We're trying to work through the case and come out with a fair and reasonable outcome. Now, surely in that fair and reasonable outcome, you would be using cases, law precedents that have that's exactly what they are, precedents. Now, whether they're put into our initial valuation or not is I believe, is irrelevant, because this information has come to hand after we found that they've used the DCF method. Surely our team knows, well, hang on, this is not the correct method to use, we weren't going to use it. So when they've put it in their valuation, we thought, well, it's more than worthy to submit this information to the bench so that they can consider it, that this approach is wrong. So just in summary, we found that counsel for the claimant are arguing a case which has not been done in a systematic way. It's not been done using proper valuation techniques, and when they have been, they've been wrong. They've been double dipping. They haven't been they haven't considered that the loss in rent of the $7,500 in their own DCF. Even when they do decide to use it, they can't get it right. Really, what would you be prepared to pay for this block of land? It's arguable that, yes, there are reduced access issues regarding the claim, but still, they have put an application in for this building, and I don't see how then they can assume that just by considering this idea and having this great idea of a development, that just by through I don't know, its conception, that they would be able to or have the right to put a crossover in the current location. They've made a number of assumptions. So we're looking at the DCF now, making lots of assumptions. Also, we're looking for the construction of assumptions in regard to putting the building there. I guess it's also worthy to note that this building was never approved. Now, whether it was our authority, which I'm not saying it is, that declined the application for to permit this construction, which I might add is there's quite a real possibility of constructing something else there. We have not in any way said that they can't build what they're going to build.
One last comment, we're over time now.
Oh, okay, we are. Okay, I'm starting to ramble, so that's probably a good thing. There's too many. There are too many issues going through this valuation that I can get in within 10 minutes. There's issues of the wrong technique. There's the issues of market value, which is a big one. There's issues of assumptions. So look, I would just put it to you that if you could use your own experience and use what you think is the appropriate technique, regardless of they slander whether we put slander our valuation because we put the market value under severance when in fact it might have been something else. The fact still remains, it is there. The $65,000 is there. Okay, so I'd just like to add that. I'd just like to add.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Might stop.
That'll be all.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add that I have nothing more to say.
Mr. Ellis, your time starts now.
Thank you, Your Honour. I won't have to rush into it too much. First, I'd like to apologise for the comical manner in which I've approached this case. Firstly, the reason I do this is because basically I don't want people falling asleep, which has been the case otherwise, really. Firstly, when it comes to this case in particular, I'd like to point out that we use a discounted cash flow